Hello, my name is Wedge, it really is. And as a previous intranet manager for national and regional companies, I always sat within the internal communications teams. And now as an intranet consultant, I retain my interest in comms and content. ClearBox does a lot of digital workplace strategy, and we help consider the best tools and channels for an organization's needs. We have some fantastic insights into the tools and technologies out there, but we always approach things from the business and people side. You can find us at clearbox.co.uk or on Twitter as ClearBox, and I'm Wedge. So today I'm going to introduce you to several content design techniques, and the topics revolve around needs, drafting, and something called crypts. If your role includes internal comms, knowledge management, or publishing, then you'll likely already care about people's needs. I mean to only introduce the content design approach in the hope that you'll do your own research and upskilling. So content and content design. What's it all about? It's about evidence. It's about discovering and defining needs and meeting those needs through the presentation of content. It's content as the interface. It's about upfront planning and writing stuff to meet a need. It may be about readability and layout, but it's not just about that. Where does it come from? Well, from around 2010 to 2014, Sarah Richards and her team were working within the government digital service and brought together techniques, no doubt from user experience design and such practices, to create content design practices. For those of you outside the UK, Gov.uk websites are very well known for clear, concise, readable reference pages. And Sarah literally wrote the book on content design, so you can check that out at contentdesign.london/book. I know, I get it, you hate the word content, but with the potential for rich digital experiences within our workplaces, it's a fine reminder that we could be talking about animations, videos, graphics, and even audio. The word has been accepted across society. Those youngsters planning their next Instagram story talk about content creation. The word is endemic and accepted. But sure, if you mean text, say text, no problem. You are already an adept communicator. Content design brings additional techniques for you to use and helps you be even more user-centered, person-focused than perhaps your past engagement comms have been. I'm going to introduce you to a set of techniques today, and it may be that you can pick the most useful and bring them to your communication processes and teammates. So this is a little bit about business change and process change and making your approach to comms and publishing bang up to date. Because we want to avoid this. I mean, take a look at this and try to work out where you would want to go. I mean, look, someone wrote this. Someone laid this out, someone approved this, and someone executed it. What is going wrong here? This is not user-focused content at all. It all starts with understanding needs, finding out what's missing and what people truly need in order to get on with their work. Your stakeholders might start with, I want them to know, and then of course you reply with, but I think people will need, and then as a team you kind of all go, obviously everyone's number one priority will be, and that's fine, those are assumptions and that's fine, you're the expert in your role, but all assumptions need testing and some need smashing. So how do you find out what's missing for people? This is not about surveying 20% of your colleagues for every reference page. This is about doing the minimum research to be able to start with evidence rather than with only assumptions. It's about conversations with the people with the need, the subject matter experts, and of course your stakeholders. What you might end up doing is some of these five. So you may start doing a desk research, you may start with some desk research where you look around at what already exists internally, what content is performing well and what content is performing poorly. You might have a look at what other organizations do, you know, checking out their best practice resources, perhaps at ClearBox, perhaps at contentdesign.london. You might have a look at what user research was already done when you were designing your channels and your intranet and your digital workplace. Was there a gap analysis? Was there a content migration plan? Of course, you'll talk to subject matter experts, But don't just talk to policy setters, talk to the administrators, the process owners, the support workers and the customer service people, because they know what's really going on. They know the real problems and they know what's missing. Try shadowing people during task completion. So if they're trying to get something done, watch them and see what frustrates them. What would have helped them had they known? Attend departmental meetings and attend company town halls. Witness how the crowd responds to what the leaders say. Record what questions they ask. And of course, you might run your own specific discussion groups to discover what people say frustrates them. This is all about discovering what people must know in order to get their work done versus the nice to know stuff. So yes, when it comes to laying out your comms, we'll rely on the good old journalistic tool of the inverted pyramid. But I'm going to give you a few new tools to help you define the must-know information. Specifically, I'm going to give you user stories and job stories. Here's an idea though to start you off. What about a discovery day? It's like a project kickoff meeting, but it's just for content. A discovery day is common enough in website work and for big projects. It's about bringing everyone together. It's about your writers, publishers, subject matter experts, and it's about your stakeholders and of course your teammates. But it's also about those senior reviewers who might block your content in the future by adding too many new ideas. The idea is that you're all together and aligned with the principles and processes. I know you won't do this for every reference page or news story, but it could be a great start if you're revamping your knowledge management or revamping a specific section of your intranet. As I've said, research isn't about exhaustive quantitative studies. This is about doing enough research so you're certain you're going to create the right content for the right people. You've done good research when you know the problem and are ready to write user stories and job stories, which I am definitely coming to next. So just to show you, here's a slide I'll refer to frequently today, just to keep us on track. We've just mentioned discovery days, and we're now going to look at user stories. Those of you into user experience may recognize this. A user story is a three-part sentence that expresses what someone needs from us in order to achieve their goal. User stories, and you will need several because you do not have one audience, help you keep the reader's background and goals in mind, helping you write useful content in the appropriate language. So on screen now is the template. As a specific colleague in a role or department, I want to know or do something so I can achieve an end goal. Here are some examples. As a colleague who drives to work every day, I want to know where to park now and next month so I can park easily and get to work on time. The next tool is a job story. And again, it's a three-part sentence, but it's specific to the task this time. It's triggered by the situation when the need arises. I've also used the phrase at the top, job to be done, because I think that's a really popular and useful framework from user experience that I suggest you should research and find out more about. I'm sure, here's an idea, I'm sure you get handed comms or content briefs, either in written form or verbally, and I suggest you take that brief and you hand back to that stakeholder a user story and a job story to verify that you're all on the same page and that, to help to show that you're planning to meet the brief with a user story and a job story. Here's an example. When approaching the office in my car, I want to know which car park to head for and how to get in so I can park without additional help and get to work on time, because apparently it's my goal to get to work on time. You will need to come back to your job story frequently as you plan and draft your content. The job story needs to be so specific and well written that your stakeholders go, oh yeah, that's right, that's exactly what we need to deal with. So your job story is well written when you all agree it meets the acceptance criteria. Now, your acceptance criteria might be obvious, or they might be worth debating with a colleague. Write decent criteria to speed up acceptance and to ensure content is written to the defined need as defined in your job story. Now, if you're doing large content operations, such as revamping your knowledge management or a section of the intranet, it might be sensible to write all of the job stories and get them accepted and approved long before you write any further work. So the idea is you do your job stories as a job lot and work through them with your team as a job lot. But for a single reference page, you just get it reviewed and approved as soon as possible. This may seem like a lot of work, but it's really just about planning what you're going to write instead of starting a first draft. This discovery and defining reduces review pain by ensuring writers and reviewers have a shared understanding. Writers simply write to meet the need, and reviewers don't derail the process with one more thing, novel ideas. So we've just touched on user stories, job stories, and accepting those stories. And we're now going to move on to skeletons. So, okay, this isn't a codified content design technique, but rather something I've developed over the years with my stakeholders. I'm sure you do something similar. It's just about laying out the bullet points as soon as you've got an understanding of the problem. Just lay them all out, and then you rework them so that you've got the most important stuff at the top, and then you do your subheadings, and then maybe you draft a title. But as I always say, don't set your heart on a title, because I think really great titles come after you've reflected on the final content. So I'm sure you do something similar when you're message shaping or planning your comms. Let's just have a look at an example for this car park. I've got my job story there reminding me of what I must cover, and I've just laid out 10 points, blah, 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 everything I think. I've got it out of my head, I've got it out of my notes, all the research I've done, all of the information and knowledge that I know about the current car park and the future car parking plan. I've whacked them down into 10 bullet points. Now, if you've got 30 bullet points, something's gone wrong. That isn't a reference page someone's going to be able to quickly refer to. But you decide if 5 bullet points or a dozen bullet points is appropriate. It's 1 bullet point per concept. That's what I'm saying. So the next step is to get the order right. And here in yellow, you'll just see where I've made some changes. All I've done is I've referred to the job story, I've kept my user story in mind, and I'm thinking about the inverted pyramid. So I've decided that this is the order. Your ordering might be a bit different to mine, and that's because of our skills and background experience. But the point is I'm following a process and I'm relying on our expertise. The next thing I do is I whack in some subheadings. Subheadings are really important, even for a short article. They help the eye jump around the page, and of course people only read what they need. So they want to go straight to the best bits for them. So big fan of subheadings. But also interestingly, now that I've put my subheadings into this bullet point list, I've reflected it, it's changed how I feel about them. So again, in yellow, you can see where I've made amendments. I think it's a great idea to have a job story to define the problem and a skeleton to demonstrate the substance of your proposed article. It sets expectations and they're really easy to review and improve. So I think they're great for working with your colleague and getting, bashing points out, bashing terminology into shape. And it's great to get your stakeholders on board. If your reviewer has the job story and your skeleton, then they're already on board with what you're going to create. So here we are in our process. We've just touched on skeletons and agreeing that skeleton. So now we're going to go into the actually writing. And I've only got 3 slides on actually writing because I'm not going to teach you how to do good comms. I'm only here to introduce some content design techniques in order to improve your processes. So tone and style. The rule in content design is that we write in the vocabulary of the audience, and I would say that we write in the tone appropriate to the topic. So you've already got your style guide, I have to assume. So if you follow the style guide and you've written in the vocabulary for the audience and you've got the tone right for the topic, then everything's done. Your reviewers won't be surprised by how you've laid out your first draft because they already know the substance of the content because they've seen your skeleton. And because we all agree on the house style and we hopefully agree on the tone, They won't have any issues with how you've written your sentences and paragraphs. So if the substance is great and the tone and style is great, we should only be reviewing to ensure that we're communicating in the best way for the audience. See, I'm not here to tell you what good comms looks like. All I'll say is it's not about specifying what good writing is. Take a look at how Patrick has addressed his professor. He has not used the appropriate style for his audience, yet Mr. Martin is not offended or confused because the topic and tone are fine. See, it's not about good grammar, it's about effective communication. Because the job stories and Skeleton are so clear, everyone knows what's coming, no surprises. So the review cycle should be less painful with fewer, maybe we need, late ideas. This is all about your comms chops. So we've gone from research, user stories, job stories, and accepting those. We've laid out a skeleton that everyone goes, yeah, that seems good. And then we've drafted content as you normally do, working with your reviewers. The next thing is to move to crits. So content designers call content reviews crits because it's about critique, not criticism, and it's about critiquing the content, not reviewing everything that we've done. Any review can be emotional, I hope you agree. I find that some review cycles become vicious circles, endlessly flailing about as everyone adds more and more to the article. So crits have rules. Crits are about seeing if the content satisfies the job stories, if the content reaches the agreed acceptance criteria. So bring your acceptance criteria to your full first draft. Sure, suggestions can be taken on board, but they don't have to be taken on board. I know. If someone says, I think we need a paragraph about the pension pot here, you can listen and note, but you don't have to add it unless it fits the job story. You might be clever and add a hyperlink to pensions. You know, this is the intranet, so you want to please everyone, but you don't have to cram more content into your article for no reason. Stick to the job stories, remind people of the skeletons, and ask them to focus on the content, not focus on the process, not focus on the creator. We're only focusing on the content in front of us. So interestingly, this isn't about going over the past. It's not about defending decisions you made last week. And it's not about taking on new suggestions. All of those things should have happened during the planning stage. We're at drafting stage now, so we're critting the content to see if it suits the audience and the task in hand. Crits may seem serious, but actually as a meeting where we're all in the same room together, they're great for building a team. They're great for getting people involved and showing you care. Maybe we want to crit on a small piece of content first so that your team and your extended team can see how things run. Your reviewer has approved the skeleton bullet points. They know the substance. That's what the skeleton does. They may have additional points to make, and maybe that's okay. But the style isn't their remit. You're the communicator if you're the writer. You're the communicator. You know the style guide and you know the tone that should be used for this topic. Yes, you absolutely want help with the vocabulary. Your subject matter experts will know the terminology that comes up time and time again. But we're not always trying to teach the audience new words. We're trying to use the vocabulary that your audience already uses. Unless you're ghostwriting for someone or trying to represent a person or department, remember that style and tone is under your control. Obviously, we must be humble enough to listen to others' input, but your concern is communicating to the defined audience in a way that they will appreciate. So this is about your comms chops. This is your style guide. This is about readability, comprehension, and impact. This slide mentions what we respect the different involved people for. So we can respect subject matter experts for their expertise, but maybe not their opinion on grammar. We can respect content designers for their understanding of the audiences, but maybe not their understanding of the subject matter. And of course, we respect writers or our writing colleagues for their understanding of grammars and tone and style, but again, maybe not for their full understanding of the subject matter. We all come together with a little bit of humility and respect, and we have a conversation about what works best for the audience. So here's something additional that I've learned. I used to insist to reviewers and content owners that the text was the text, and I would make them review drafts in Word. This is especially useful and easy in Office 365 or SharePoint, because everyone can access and comment upon the very same document without any of that version control mess that you get when you email attachments around. But people used to remark to me, oh, it just reads differently now that it's published. And they were sad. And they were right. I have now learned that context matters. The article reads and feels different in Word than when published. I used to ignore this as, just people's feelings, but now I realize that feelings really matter. We don't absorb information as a mere intellectual pursuit. We are driven to learn what's relevant to us by our emotional needs. My best work is done when I can publish drafts in situ for a final review. If your intranet has a draft facility, fantastic. But if not, maybe it's okay to do some final tweaking soon after publishing. Maybe that's okay. Reviewers, whether subject matter experts or stakeholders, need to understand that they are reviewing the content against the acceptance criteria. They are not here to give you new ideas. You've already drafted everything. The acceptance criteria are around meeting the needs expressed in the job stories for the audiences described in the user stories. So you may want to provide the job stories and user stories along with the content and a note about acceptance criteria. Assuming you stick to the house style guide and have the tone right for the topic, you may want to steer the reviewers away from expressing their personal preferences about vocabulary and punctuation. But remember, be wide open to subject matter experts about terminology and the things they think you've missed. So these are the tools and this is the process. But one of the things about content design is that you can mix things up. As an internal communicator, I expect you to cherry pick these tools and bring what you think works to your content work, for your publishers, for your department leaders, and for your knowledge management. It may be that this process works for you well for the big issues, but you'll only use certain tools like job stories for individual reference pages or important comm stories. And the great thing about the acceptance criteria or the CRIPs is that you do them when it feels appropriate. So as a content designer, you've got quite a lot of responsibility. And some final thoughts, just to leave you with some good things. As we've said, content design is about meeting a defined need, but there's nothing in content design itself that says your communications must be boring. You are a communicator. You know that you've got to engage and interest your audience as well. So while some website copy has been optimized until it becomes flat, that's not necessary. That has to be appropriate to the topic, appropriate to the audience, like when you're doing something very, very serious, like trying to order a passport. But, think about your audience and think about your topic. There's nothing in content design that says that you can't have a good turn of phrase. Remember content strategy. Remember your content strategy. Here I am today talking about content tactics, but keep in mind your content strategy. Everything you create creates work in the future. We should be creating less content of a higher quality. Unless you're just doing timely communications, all of your content has a life cycle, and so you should plan for it. If you're serious about content operations rather than only timely communications, then you'll have to consider your life cycle carefully. You may believe that your content is highly valuable today, and I believe you too, but content tends to have a half-life. It will become less valuable as time goes on because the world changes and people change. So you need to plan for that half-life, and that is content debt. So content debt is the concept that there's time and resources needed to deal with your content in the future. It's likely that your content has a half-life, so it will either need deleting or improving in the future, and that may not be you. So everything we do now, we have to be aware that it's going to cost the organization time and money to revamp it in the future. And weirdly, if they don't invest in revamping the content in the future, it will cost employees time because they may be reading out-of-date content, or they may be following out-of-date instructions. So content costs you whether you are very, very good with it, and content costs you if you're very, very bad with it. Now, content designers are all over website design because that's where the money is. With these content design techniques, you can be the internal content hero. I ask you to join me as an intranet content designer. As I always say, and I hope you agree when you're doing your communications, we need to match the message to the audience to the channel. Content designers have 4 touch point principles. It's got to be in the audience's vocabulary. It's got to be in the best format for them. We've got to provide what the audience needs, and we've got to design with data or research results. If I've inspired you to do your own research, here are the books that I've been reading recently around typography, accessibility, readability, and of course at the bottom right there, there's Sarah Richards' book, which itself has a unique visual design. And yes, I'll send you the slides so you can take these recommendations from me. Here are the terms and practices that I brought you today. I'm hoping that you will do your own research and work out which of these techniques you can cherry pick and bring to your processes. So it's a little bit about business change, it's a little bit about process change, and it's about promoting good techniques to the teammates that you work with on content. Wow, we've actually managed to do it within the 30 minutes allotted. So we've technically got 15 minutes for questions, but Sam, hello there. Do we have many questions already?
Thank you, Wedge. That was brilliant. Yeah, really interesting stuff. So everybody, please do start putting questions into the Q&A panels. I've got loads. We've got another one that came in. Wedge, while I just get people going, but have a reflection on this question. What's different for content design for internal communicators versus doing it for websites? And meanwhile, everybody, please, we've got a Q&A panel, or by all means, put it in the chat box as well. We're very open to questions. Wedge, if you flick to the next slide, I'll just tell people about an offer while you have a think about my question as well. So one of the things that ClearBox does, most of what we do is around working with internal communicators on intranet and digital workplace strategy. But we also, from the point of view of being independent consultants, produce reports like this one, SharePoint Intranets in a Box, where it acts as a buyer's guide to tools that sit on top of SharePoint and make them more effective as an intranet. So we don't sell any products ourselves, and that puts us in a good place to understand what is it that people want from intranets, what's the gap from what SharePoint offers, and how well do these products do in filling it. So we've done over 30 in-depth reviews, and there's another 20 which we itemize as well. It can really save weeks off the decision making and give you a lot more confidence if you're looking for a new intranet. So Wedge, I kind of pose that question for you. What's different between internal comms and doing content design for websites? What are your thoughts?
Yes, thanks for that prompt, Sam. I think with website design, there's a job lot of work to be done. So we all understand the channel, and what we have to do is understand the content and the audiences. However, with internal communications, we've got multiple channels. We might start with the intranet, but the intranet itself is not one single channel. I know it might feel like an internal website, but it isn't as clear cut as that, because you've got your reference pages that may not be used every day in your knowledge management. These things need to come up on search results, and these things need to be at hand when needed. You know, these are pull comms, pull content to pull people into the intranet. But then of course you've got your push content, you've got your news and your views, and you've got your social channels and the different areas, the different places people within the digital workplace can find your internal communications. So there's something about the content design for websites, which I almost think is easier because you can just do it as a job lot and get it done. But with internal communications, we're always hopping on one foot. I think there's always something that we can improve. And it's about our reference pages, which I hope I've touched on a lot today, and our knowledge management and those departmental pages and topic pages that we can definitely optimize to help people better. But then of course there's our news stories and how we promote our major reference content across the social channels.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we've got quite a few questions coming in. So let me start with the first one, which was from JL Delayan, who said, first of all, fantastic, very practical presentation. Well done, Wedge.
Oh, thank you. Gosh.
How do you see the connection between content design and content strategy? Do you see content design as part of a larger content strategy for employee comms?
Yes, I see everything as a mesh. I said mesh there, not mess. Everything's a mesh, and I've been banging on about content tactics for many years because I'm passionate about readability and good page layout. But I've always thought of content tactics as being underneath or complementing your content strategy. So you've got content strategy that explains the purpose of what you're doing. You know, where are we going with our content? What do we want to achieve generally? And then you've got your content tactics and content design that says, how are we going to achieve that? And then you've got your content operations, content ops, that says, how are we physically going to do it? As in, who's involved? What processes do we need? So anyone who's in content ops, doing a lot of content, like content migration or content improvement, I suggest should take content design as a set of techniques and take content tactics, you know, page layout, readability, typography, vocabulary as a skill set. And they should use their content operations so that they've got good processes for involving the right people to get things done in accordance with a content strategy. So your content strategy might be a 15-page document, but I'm hoping it's also a pithy paragraph or two that you can all get behind.
And that was pithy for clarification again. Yeah, yes. Quite right, Wedge. Next question. What's the most challenging experience you've had with content design and how did you handle it?
Oh gosh.
That's like a job interview question, isn't it?
Yes, I don't want to gossip too much, but you might have heard during my presentation just then that I am really concerned with reviews. I'm really concerned with writing fantastic content that absolutely is brilliant. I know it's phenomenal. I've tested it with all of the people I should test with, but then a stakeholder, someone who's paid a lot of money says, do you know what? I think we should put this in as well. And I'm really concerned about overloading content and really, that's been quite painful for me. So the lessons I've discussed today about reducing review pain, they all come from my personal experience and also my personal experience about using Word. I mean, right now, I still love using Word to review, improve, and approve content that we're going to publish. However, I do now respect that once it's published, we all have different feelings about it. So that's how I've overcome things. I've tried to improve the process to avoid having reviewers think that they're in charge. And I've allowed myself to be more adaptable and flexible in the minutes and days after publishing. Quite a personal journey, actually.
What you say, I think, rings so true for me. I mean, sometimes we've drafted, for example, announcements about Office 365 is coming, or about digital workplaces, and then it has to go through approval steps. And it seems like every reviewer wants to add in their own little extra paragraph or change, but then we haven't really had a process to say, is it still coherent? Yeah, so each stakeholder's got their own perspective, but do those perspectives come together in something which is a good end result? And I think what you've shown, Wedge, is by focusing on the jobs approach and on understanding the audiences more, you can decouple that discussion about what is it we need to get across from is the grammar right or is the language right? And that's really powerful to me.
Yes, it takes some time to get used to, I think, but there's something about splitting out the substance into those skeleton bullet points and then trusting your communicator, your writer, your copywriter with the style and tone. Yeah. It all starts from that job story.
Yeah. Next question from Tony Cox. We know Tony. Hello, Tony. How are you doing? Any recommendations for content planning / scheduling tools?
Oh, No, I don't think I have got a recommendation, I'm sorry to say. The web is awash with paid for tools and templates in Excel and Word that can help you. And I've only ever had to need a content plan for my intranet homepage when we had a really popular homepage and everyone assumed that the homepage was the only thing that got read. That was some time ago, and I really do believe that the intranet is a multiple channel thing now.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry, Tony, I haven't got a recommendation, but I might tweet some good templates straight after this webinar.
Yeah, I mean, inside ClearBox for our web content, for some of it we use Kanban boards, don't we? So we use Planner, or Trello would do the same thing for lining up potential articles and taking them through a process through to sign off. And at our scale, that works pretty well, I think.
Yes, Microsoft Planner is a good tool. And if you've got Trello instead, it's very, very similar. And again, you inflict your process upon the tool. So you're either moving things from buckets to buckets, or you're assigning tasks to people. And what's great is that you get a visual of the content that you should be focusing on while respecting delays. Things always get pushed back.
Yeah. And we have two questions from Randy Galvin. So the first one, is content always more effective with visuals such as images, video, animation?
So I believe so. Weirdly, I believe that we will put more cognitive effort into an article that has any kind of graphic or visual. It's much better if that graphic or visual is highly relevant, but studies from 5 or 6 years ago showed that even a slightly relevant image helped people bother to concentrate. And this is what I meant when I said, learning isn't purely an intellectual pursuit. There's an emotional element to it. So yes, I'm really keen on having imagery in all of our content.
And I'd add to that, the ideal thing about imagery, particularly on things like intranets, is that people will know if they've been there before much more quickly because they recognize the visual rather than scanning the text. So sometimes if you're searching for an answer and you keep landing on the same page, you'll know that by saying, hang on, I've seen the icon before, or indeed I'm looking for the icon because I want to go back to something I saw a couple of weeks ago. So visuals help with that as well.
Definitely. There are just so many ancillary benefits to caring about the visual design of your page beyond typography.
Yeah. I'm going to jump ahead to a question by Matt Boyd. Hi, Matt. Is it possible to have too many people when putting together a team for content design and review? Conflicts and ideas can make the progress longer and more challenging.
I mean, I personally think so. I think, we should have single points of contact within a department. You don't want two people from a department feeding in. I like things to be simple. I like things to go one way along a linear process, not too many circles. However, that would come under the remit of content operations. So do your research on content ops. That's a good hashtag and it's a good search term as well.
Great. And the other one by Randy, because I should come back to it, is what tools or apps could you recommend that can measure and analyze user data and engagement on SharePoint?
Oh, right. Well, we have got some analytics packages reviewed on the ClearBox website. So if you head to clearbox.co.uk and then go into our resources menu, you'll see our reports, or go into the reports menu, and you'll see our analytics report, which is free to download. So you can just have this. And we will name check and review 6 useful analytics packages, because what you've probably noticed is that SharePoint Analytics only covers individual sites. And yes, Microsoft always improves these analytics and they look very good, but you probably need your own thing.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we did that report. And since then I'd add that Tryan, T-R-Y-A-N-E has come out, which looks interesting. Yeah. Cardiolog and Hairpoint, which is a crazy name, but it literally is SharePoint without the S, Hairpoint, both came out well. If you want more on the kind of social engagement, particularly if you're using Yammer, for example, then tygraph does both, and Swoop for Yammer are also worth checking out.
Oh, great to name check all them, good stuff.
And the last question, what's your advice to internal communicators with mixed genre readers, such as millennials?
Oh, so your user stories need to match the audiences, and this is plural, so you should have several user stories for your different content, and your user stories need to be specific to the person and their background. Now, I personally don't very much care about generational gaps, because I believe that, you know, most people have millennial values right now because of the media, even if we're not millennials ourselves. But yes, I absolutely respect that there can be very, very young people and older people in the workforce. So your user stories have to capture this. When it comes to a single piece of content that you expect multiple people to understand, then I'm afraid it does need optimizing down. And what I mean by that is we have to be careful with our turns of phrases, as in previously I said, hey, you know, we're internal communicators, we can be interesting, content must be interesting, people need to read it. But if it's a real challenge to get one piece of content in front of a mixed audience, then we have to simplify. And that means definitely following content design principles. And that means simplifying your paragraphs and vocabulary.
I think that's a great thought to finish on. We're nearly up for time. So thank you ever so much, everybody, for all your questions. They were really good. Thank you, Wedge, for taking us through that. I think that was fascinating. And just to say once more, we did record this. We will share that recording. Feel free to pass it around to your colleagues, and we'll also share those slides as well. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Wedge. Have a good day, everybody.